We've identified this issue of the motorcycle being purchased and how that seems to have been kind of a turning point for you, Jen. Am I getting that right? That there's something that kind of happened for you inside when that event took place?
Yeah, I felt like it was sort of all of a sudden now we really aren't a team anymore after that. It felt like we were both kind of doing our own thing and making our own decisions, and not like we used to always talk about how to do things together, how things affected the family, and not. And I guess it just boiled down to, for me, it wasn't that I would have said no. It was just that I felt like, because you didn't bring it to me and say, this is what I want to do, and I feel strongly about it, or I feel like I'm working hard and I'd really like to do this. It was just that the decision was made without any input from me at all. I mean, were you afraid that I would have said no?
No, it wasn't that I was afraid you would say no. I wanted to feel like I had the power to do something. That I didn't have to get.
Well, you talked about wanting to be able to do something for yourself, because
Right.
you'd been giving at home and at work, and well, that issue, to me, it almost feels like there's kind of this little tumor in your relationship that needs to be removed, and it's going to be hard for you to feel like a team until we deal with that and remove that issue, or at least resolve that issue to a certain extent. And the way you've been battling each other at it, it's almost like, if there was a tumor, a surgeon wouldn't use a saw and a hammer to do surgery, would he? Or would she? Yeah. And that's kind of how you two have been approaching this issue. And I want to suggest that we move on to this next exercise called seeking and granting forgiveness, as a way that we might maybe more effectively try and do surgery on this issue. So we've got this exercise. I think we've turned to it already here. It's called seeking and granting forgiveness. And there's really 6 steps for both the person who's seeking forgiveness and for the person who's granting forgiveness. And we've already talked a little bit about this, and Bill, you were saying, you're very willing at this point to go through this and acknowledge, maybe not that it was categorically wrong for you to have something nice for yourself, but maybe it was the way you went about it that was the most hurtful. So can we dive in on this? And I want to start with you. Step 1 for seeking forgiveness, Bill, is admitting what you did was wrong or hurtful. Could you just look at Jen and talk to her a little bit about that piece with the motorcycle?
I can see that by making the decision that I made without asking you, I understand how that hurt you. And it wasn't my intent to do that. But
I didn't even need you to ask me, though. It wasn't that you needed me to grant you permission necessarily. But I appreciate you saying that.
Okay, good. Now the next step, Bill, and that was good, is to try and understand or empathize with the pain your partner has felt, okay? Do you know what empathize means? Let me tell you, it's kind of like if you were to put yourself in her shoes and look at it and feel that from her standpoint. And that's what we do when we try and empathize with someone. So one great way to do this step is to actually ask her, would you tell me what it felt like for you when this event happened? And then, remember we talked about the active listening. let her know what you hear her saying when she's done explaining that. So your job will be to kind of keep it in a bite-sized chunk that he can actually get. Okay, so go ahead on step 2, just ask her to tell you about that.
Jen, would you tell me what it felt like when I bought the motorcycle without asking you?
It felt like you didn't care about what I thought, and that we weren't a team anymore. I don't know. That's a
Yeah, well,
bite-sized chunk.
Yeah, yeah. Tell her what you heard. What did she say?
You felt that my buying the motorcycle without asking you meant that I didn't care what you thought and didn't feel like we were working together as a team.
Yeah. Now, one of your things, Jen, is your first step on granting forgiveness is to acknowledge the pain or anger that you've felt over this. So this is kind of your chance too to make sure he really gets it. Is there anything you want to add to this and tell Bill about how you felt about that situation?
Well, it was hard for me to go back to work full time, knowing that we kind of needed the money, and so we're both working really hard, and to feel like one person deserves something over another was really hard, and that hurt a lot. And that just, it sort of felt like a turning point in our relationship. There has been a lot of conflict, but that sort of was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because I wasn't even, it wasn't even talked about with me, and you didn't take into consideration that Joelle's in college and needs the money, and that I'm working really hard to make ends meet along with you working really hard, and all those things were kind of left by the wayside.
Now, I know that was a lot.
I'm sorry,
That's
I'm
all right.
not
No,
very
that's
brief.
all right. That's all right. There's a lot of kind of raw feelings there, and that was very well expressed. And I have to tell you, forgiveness is a process. And so we're going to go through these steps here, but this may be a process that unfolds over time. And so you can revisit this, and you guys can work on this. And it may be important for you at some time, Jen, to say, you know, I still feel like there's a couple things that I want you to understand. And if you don't understand that, I'm not going to feel very safe about how we're doing things here. So that's okay for you to both realize this is a process. And for you, you know, the mistake a lot of people make when they're seeking forgiveness is they want it to happen quickly and be done and be over. And you need to give her permission to work through this, and that's okay. All right? Let's move on to this next step, though. Taking responsibility for your actions and making restitution if necessary. Now, in this situation, what do you feel like how have you been taking responsibility, or how can you take responsibility for your actions around this?
I'm trying to work hard. You know, and I know that you don't like all the traveling that I do, but that's all part of me trying to do what I can to get us financially where we want to be.
Good, good.
I know you work hard.
Now the next step, Bill, is number 4, assure your partner you will not do it again. Is that something, and we're not necessarily asking you never to buy something for yourself or to do something that you've earned, but it's maybe the way you did it. Can you talk to her about it, maybe comforting her, or that she would know you're not going to go out and do a major purchase again like that?
In what we've been talking about, I realize that I should have talked to you about it first. And I won't make that mistake again. I don't want to make that mistake again. And I do want us to be a team.
Well, if we could maybe agree on what a minimum or maximum would be with regard to how much we could each spend without consulting the other one.
Jen, the fourth step for you is to begin to let go of the blame and the resentment and the negativity. And I sensed earlier today that that's something that's you've been
It's hard
holding
for
on
me,
to a
yeah.
little bit. And I know that's going to be a process too. Was that something you feel like you can begin that process?
I don't like being a negative person. I don't like harboring resentment. I've never been that way. It's very unusual for me to, I mean, this has been about a year that this happened, and it's just been hard for me to let go, I think, because we've never really been able to sit down and talk about it in any, you know, calm way. It's just been an explosion every time, I think, because we both have very emotional feelings about it. And so I don't like feeling that way. I don't want to feel that way anymore.
So it sounds like you'd like to let go.
I'd like to let
of
go
that
of it.
negativity. Yeah.
I guess I just never really knew how to do that, you know?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's going to be a process, and there'll be days you feel good about it, and then maybe days you'll revisit some of that, and you're going to have to make that choice to let go of it again, and that's okay. Now, Bill, we're looking at the fifth step here for you, which is to actually apologize or ask for forgiveness. And I know that's not easy, but, and again, we're not saying what you did was categorically wrong. It was more about how it happened. So we've talked about how she felt, and I think you're beginning to understand that. But could you communicate to her and actually ask her for the forgiveness? And then I'd like you, if you feel ready, to respond to him in some way that he understands that you're willing to maybe start that process. Go ahead.
Jen, I'm sorry that I did what I did. I didn't intend for it to hurt you, but I see that it did, and I apologize.
I'll work on letting this go. I accept your apology. This is going to be hard.
You know, as we wrap this up, this section on forgiveness, I think it might be helpful if you would just kind of close it by telling her what you want for your marriage. You know, what would you like to see restored as you guys move through this issue? And I'd like you both to do that. So you go first, Bill, and then I'm going to ask Jen to do that too.
I think that what I'd like is for us to get back to where we started. You know, I feel like somewhere along the line I've lost my best friend, and you know, I miss that.
Yeah.
I want us to be buddies again and to be a team and a family, and we've got so much to look forward to, and I want you to want to come home and I don't want you to want to bury yourself in work, because home is no fun. I want to make it more fun, and I'll work really hard to do that.
That's great, guys. Thank you for working on this.
Thank you.
Good job. All right.